This is the Code Deploy Go Live podcast, episode 9 with Julie Turner and me, Andrew Connell. This episode is available as a video on our YouTube channel that we've linked to in the show notes. Today, Julie and I cover the latest news for full stack developers and reflect on our key takeaways from the TechCon 365 conference last week in Seattle that was held in late June. Recorded live June 30th, 2025. Hey, Julie, how's it going?
Hey, AC, long time no see.
Right. Yeah. It feels like it's, at least for me, it feels like it's been a long time. So we got to see each other we got to see each other last week. But what you been up to since the last time we recorded, as I throw it at you with taking a sip of coffee?
Mostly sleeping. Jet lag killed me. It always does. I don't know what my deal is, but like when I go to these trips where I'm like moving further than 3 hours difference, I get home and then my body is like, yeah, you're done. And I'm like sleeping 10 hours a night and I'm just, But yeah, I got home on Friday night. So that was a really easy flight. I actually landed 45 minutes early, which is crazy. But anyway, all good. And then my husband and son met me and we drove up the coast of Massachusetts to a town called Swampscott, and we had dinner at a really cute restaurant right on the coast with sun coming in and had great seafood. And my son had his first sushi, which is like a crab avocado sushi. Yeah. So he was like, it's cooked, so it's a little bit
still
whatever.
But how you get into it?
He was so happy. He was like loving it because he wanted crab. So he really likes seafood. So we had some sushi and we then went to see Piff the Magic Dragon at a local theater. And it was really funny. It's supposed to be all ages, but I'm going to tell you there was a lot of innuendo and stuff that maybe was a little much. Right at the beginning, he looks over when we left, actually, he looks over and he's like, I don't think that was all ages. I was like, you're right, buddy. It wasn't. There was a lot of swearing and innuendo. And he's right at that age where, he kind of knows, but he mostly doesn't know. So it's just a real interesting whatever. But whatever. He loved it. He had fun. So it was really good. So we had a nice time. How about you?
It was fun. So I think last time since we talked, a good bit has happened since the last time you and I talked. We'll cover a little bit of that in our. I think we'll cover a little bit in the notes and a little bit in the main part of the show here. But so you and I were both at the TechCon 365 conference in Seattle, Washington last week, which was, I guess that was June the 23rd through the 28th. I think if I'm right, or 27th.
That sounds right. I can double check. I can look.
Something like that. Whatever the last full week was of June 2025 is where you and I were. And I had travel issues on both ends.
You did.
I missed the first day of the conference or the first day of the workshops, which I had a full day workshop on, which was really a bummer because I had spent like 3 full days, refreshing my demos, building brand new demos, refreshing my slides, my story, everything around building declarative agents for Microsoft 365 Copilot. And on the way there, the short story on that one was I got stuck in Atlanta. So I live in I fly out of Jacksonville, Florida, and going from Jacksonville to Atlanta, I had a cancellation. The backup plane they put me on left about an hour late, about 45 minutes late, which meant I missed my connection. Wait on standby to try and get another flight out that night out of Atlanta to get to Seattle. Didn't happen. So then I realized, well, I'm not going to make it before my workshop starts as a full day workshop. So the conference and I decided best if we just cancel it and give people a chance to find something else that they want to do. And we just reach out to them afterwards. So I didn't get there until like 2 o'clock or so, 2 or 3 o'clock, the first day of the workshop. So I missed that one. And then on the back end, so we had a great event itself. And you and I will talk a little bit about that in the main part of the show. And we'll talk about some lessons learned. So if you guys are listening, if you're like, oh, I'll get the news and we'll just tune out. I mean, I think there's some good stuff that we can talk about here. I'd love to get some input too on some questions that I've got from some of my takeaways. But on the back end of the trip, I generally like to fly out the day after the conference if it's a conference that's at least. I don't like to like leave right when the show's over and then get home at like midnight. To
Mm.
give myself a little bit of like decompression afterwards before kind of re-entering the real world, have some time that I don't feel guilty like processing my inbox and all that kind of junk.
Yeah.
And so I was going to fly out on Saturday. I did fly out on Saturday, but apparently some people probably have noticed this in the news. Atlanta got rocked on Friday night. I guess that would have been June the 27th. Um, yeah, June the 27th. Got rocked. Like they lost power for a few hours. The tower had to be evacuated. They had quarter-inch hail that damaged, or they had to inspect up to 100 planes for that. So as I was en route, it affected some people who were flying the red eye back east. Mark Rackley's flight was canceled. He was bumped onto my plane. So the plane, the people that we were with, obviously the level just went way down when Mark joined our payload. It's a joke. It's a joke. I love Mark. Anyway,
he just asks to be made fun of. He really
totally
puts himself in a total place where he's like, please make fun of me.
Yeah, right.
He's like Todd that way. So
yeah, totally. Todd Clint, you're referring to Todd Clint.
yes, I am.
So anyway, on my flight on the way over from Atlanta, first I thought the day was going to be great. I looked like I was going to be bumped up to first class. I was in middle seat comfort for the first time, and as long as I remember, I completely bonehead when I registered or booked the flight and never picked a seat. So they assigned me a middle seat, and it's like I went back. I'm like, why in the world did you guys put me in the middle seat? I'm like, oh, because I didn't tell you. I picked 3 seats and not this one. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Anyway, so on my flight back, I start to see like, hey, we're delayed leaving Seattle. Finally, when we end up leaving, I'm thinking I might miss my connection. And then about an hour into the flight, I notice jumping on the Wi-Fi that my flight has been canceled and there were no other options because of all the trash that had happened the night before. So I spent the entire 5 hours, probably 3.5 of the 5 hours flight back to Atlanta, trying to find another flight option to get home. And then when I couldn't figure that out, trying to find a rental car. First of all, make sure that my bags would show up and not be sent all the way to Jacksonville. And if they were going to sit in Jacksonville, fine. But I didn't want to have my bags get delivered to the carousel and then me not make it to Jacksonville. So basically, I get home and I'm like, my bags are still in Atlanta. Usually I do check bags, but I had 2. I had an equipment bag, so I had to check one of them. So I figured, screw it, I'll just check both of them. It was incredibly hard. I could not find. I then was trying to find a rental car and a hotel. There were no hotels available anywhere near the airport. There were no rental cars available at the Atlanta airport, the busiest airport in the world. Long story slightly shorter, I ultimately got a hotel. There was a whole mess of trying to get my bags. Like, if you ever check a bag, if you don't have one of those like location tracking tags on your bag, frankly, you're crazy. I'm an Apple person, so I have an air tag in both my bags. Delta showed that they had checked my bag in to the next plane, but then I could track it where it was the Atlanta airport. And I saw that even though the lady on the support chat told me that my bags would be delivered to the carousel, so I hung around for about an hour and a half after the flight to get those before I went to the airport. I saw they were actually checked into the next flight that was going to Jacksonville, coming home, even though I wasn't going to be on it. And the air tags showed that they were actually on the plane as well. So I was like, all right, screw it. I'm just going to we're going to the hotel. Right as I'm pulling up to the hotel, Delta says, hey, there's a seat for you available on this flight. And I also saw my bags were at the carousel. And I was like, it leaves in 1 hour and 45 minutes away from the airport. I'm like, so number one, my bags are sitting at the carousel. Number two, and it's 11 o'clock at night. And 2, I had a ticket. I was like, screw it. So I went to bed, had a car, woke up the next morning, 30 minutes before I was going to go pick up the rental car that I was going to get. They call and say, we have no cars available for you, even though you have a reservation. But thankfully my bags did go all the way to Jacksonville. So, and then right as I'm doing that, I'm like, well, let me try and find another rental car. And as I do that, I'm like, let me go just check Delta. I happen to find another flight that had a ticket on it. I had a seat on it. I booked that. it just, man, and then that flight ended up being delayed like 4.5, 5 hours yesterday. So I spent the whole day in Atlanta
Ugh.
airport. Finally got home though.
Ugh.
At a decent time, like about like 8:30 or about 7 or 7:30 at night. My bags were home. So ultimately all ended well, but
Ugh. What a
just,
nightmare.
yeah, just frustrating, right? Just
Yeah.
so I can tell you right now, you and I, we're going to be at the TechCon conference in Atlanta in about 5
Yes.
weeks in late August.
Yep.
I'm 5 hours away from Atlanta. I'm driving. I'm not going to book a ticket on this one. And it is nothing against, I will tell you, people are like going, oh, well, Delta sucks. Like, I disagree. I think all airlines have their own issues. And personally, for
Yeah.
me, when there's an issue, like this was weather and it was massive weather. I mean, they had to evacuate the tower at some point. So obviously
Right.
things got totally wrecked. They still did a good job. There's even like a reimbursement form where they're like, reached out proactively and was like, hey, if you incurred expenses from this, then let us know. We'll try and make it better for you. So
I always fly Delta too, and I find them very responsive. So, I mean, of the airlines that I've been screwed by, they've screwed me the least. So I'm pretty happy with them.
for me, I mean, granted, there's been 1 or 2 times where it hasn't worked out in my favor, but generally, like,
Yeah.
we're not going to fly when it's bad weather. I get that. That's a safety
Yeah.
thing. But it's shit happens, and you always find out how good somebody is based on how they address like a customer service problem. And
Yeah.
I thought they did the best they could. So, and I mean, frankly, the system was overloaded too. So things where it's a ball dropped, I'm sure. Where lessons
Yeah.
learned, I'm sure. Anyway, okay. So that's what I've been up to. That's kind of been on my mind, and I'm dragging a little bit this morning from that experience of 48 hours.
Understandable. Very understandable.
But at any rate, people didn't probably tune in to hear all of my travel stories.
Ah,
And if you
meh.
did, I'm sorry, but I hope you at least click through to at least the next chapter, because the next part of this episode, we're going to cover some news. Sound good, Julie?
Sounds great. Let's move.
All right. So I have a bunch of news that I've collected here. One of the big things that I wanted to touch on first, though, is a bit of a follow-up from our last conversation you and I had, because when you and I last recorded in episode 8, we
Yep.
talked about the fact that that morning we had gotten news that Microsoft was retiring in 1 year. They deprecated, and then they were going to retire in 1 year the feature field customizers in the SharePoint framework.
Yep.
So at the time, that's all the information we had, and we just kind of ranted and kind of complained. Well, we didn't complain. We ranted and complained quite a bit in that episode.
Yeah.
Um, since then, if anybody has somehow missed all of this, there was some stuff that changed, and I'll include links in the show notes where I'll include a link to our last episode. I've got an article I wrote about it, and I also have a link to the Message Center ID, which is 1094051. Of course, if you want all these links, best way to get them is to subscribe to our newsletter, and you get them all delivered in your inbox. But they're also in the show notes. Ultimately, what Microsoft did is, after receiving a significant amount of pushback from the community, they backtracked and they simply updated the Message Center on June the 24th and said, quote, "We will not be proceeding with this change at this time. Thank you for your patience." Now, it's unclear if they are still deprecated. It is unclear. Like the quote that when we first got from them and talking behind the scenes, it looked like the public quote that they made was, or they said that we could use publicly, gave me the impression that they have taken away the retirement date and they were just going to reevaluate the whole thing. This
That
message in
is
the Message Center,
exactly what I got too.
yeah,
Yes.
this message in the Message Center basically says, sorry, nothing happened. We're not doing anything.
I don't, yes. That's yes. I don't
So
understand either. I'm very confused.
I am too. And you and I have a bunch of, just by the nature of being MVPs and having some like NDA discussions with Microsoft, you and I have some inside kind of baseball knowledge as well, that some stuff we probably could, but a lot of stuff we can't really share. Um, I can say one thing. People say, well, why did they do this? So I wrote this before they shared all that stuff with us. And I wrote in my article that my theory was that the reason why they were doing it, or what the behind the scenes was, the list team and the SharePoint framework team got in a fight again, and the list team won the battle. I'm not going to go into any specifics about it, but I'll just say that I'm not too far off from missing the mark. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I feel pretty comfortable that I was pretty confident that I don't have to go back and delete what I said. It's just frustrating. We're going to see what the fallout is from this. The story I don't think is over, but we just want to update you on what that was. And I still feel, while our emotions were pretty raw at the time, my take on it is, I still, I feel even more so that I think that they've really damaged the trust of developers, not just for the SharePoint framework developers, but just for Microsoft 365 dev as a whole. They really, really hurt my trust. I feel like I got stabbed in the back on this, and just from vouching for all this stuff for the last few years. So
Yeah, and I same from using it for all these years. I don't think I would retract my rant at all. I think I would make the same rant today that I made 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm still reeling a little bit from the whole thing, and that aspect of, they said this was the contract, and now they're starting to try to walk back that contract in very unsupportive ways, let's say.
yeah,
Like, I get that things need to change. I'm not arguing that things shouldn't change, but to just sort of, the way it was done and the plan for how you're supposed to go forward was just disrespectful, and not taking into any account what we have been doing for years, because that has been a feature for us for years. So
yeah, it really does. It really does just call into question a lot of stuff on who you can believe, who you can trust, going forward at Microsoft, what you can really take to the
yeah,
bank.
yeah,
I
yeah.
I mean, we should have another episode, a bigger episode about this. There's a couple big episodes I think the last week that I'd like to talk about in the future, and I'd love to get some input from people. But uh, I think a lot of it right now is that, like, the skinniest from last week is that it was like the nail. It was really the thing that really put the exclamation point of the period on the statement in my head. That is, M365 is no longer a PaaS like they've wanted it to be. It's a SaaS. It's a software as a service. And if you want to customize it, their primary way of doing it is they want you to do it using Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Copilot Studio. But there's still a bunch of APIs and dev story and extensibility options. But to me, I guess it wouldn't be surprised to me if they had done something that really undercut the dev story at any point in the future. And it really makes me question, like, why people should trust, like, the focus going forward. So, or really trust is building a product on top of 365. If you build it living outside of 365 and interface with 365, that's different, or at least make yourself as insulated as you possibly can,
Yeah, and
based on the scenario.
I think there's a lot of ways you can insulate yourself. I mean, we sort of talked about it a little bit 2 episodes, no, wait, 4 episodes ago, in that there's ways you can build your solutions, host them yourself outside the system, and just bootstrap them in. That the only big problem is that there has been, since the inception of SharePoint, using that as the baseline for Microsoft 365, which it still really is, it's sort of the anchor product. There has always been this idea of meeting the user where they are and extending the UI. And that's the piece that is falling apart most, right? I don't think, I mean, I think we should be super clear that it's not about building on the platform. The APIs are the APIs. I feel really confident that actually those APIs are going to start getting better, not worse. I that whole insider baseball thing, I have some good feelings about where that's going to go. So that makes me feel really happy. Where I'm most concerned is that integrating and extending the UI piece. And that's not to say like the team's, iframe thing or any of that. It's sort of the deeply integrated piece with their UI and what you want to do with it. And I think that's where we're seeing that's where I'm seeing the fear. It's around that piece of it. And so it's the extending the SharePoint thing.
Yeah.
Just to sort of clarify my position.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't feel we're not too far apart from this either. And you referred to an episode we talked about it. I think your episode 4, we said optimizing
Yes,
SharePoint
4.
projects with reusable code. That's
Yeah.
the one where we talked about how you could essentially build your app, as like a self-standing kind of a thing, and then leverage it like inside of Teams or inside of or with the SharePoint framework inside of SharePoint. So
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Horse sufficiently beaten. We'll move on. Got a couple general things to kind of touch on here for a lot of this is all M365 dev stuff or Azure dev stuff. And again, I know we're the code deploy go live podcast, but I also know a lot of our audience is going to be coming from that side. So it's just more or less there's always going to be there's probably going to be for a long time a Microsoft developer slant to this stuff because of who we are and who the audience is, but it's not limiting. So a couple of rapid fire things. The guys behind a tool called the Dev Proxy, two cloud developer advocates, Gary Trinder and Waldeck Mastercars for Microsoft. They have a thing they've created called the Dev Proxy. It's been around for a while. They have a few breaking changes, but some of the big stuff is that they have a MCP server that they've created with for the Dev Proxy. Allows you to create configurations using natural language, contextual help for working with the Dev Proxy, and then also discovering some of the features and capabilities with this, among other things. They've done some stuff around improved logging, exposing language model prompts, etc. So, and a new version of the toolkit, which is a VS Code extension that they have as well. So you can take a look at this. Actually, some nice little improvements there. Another thing that we've got is they've also have this in Microsoft 365 Copilot. They now have this agent mode for not Microsoft 365 Copilot. They now have this thing for like agent mode in VS Code and in Visual Studio, which is going to turn GitHub Copilot into an autonomous paired programmer capable of handling multi-step development tasks from end to end. So kind of helping you build a plan, execute that plan along the way, and loop through tasks until completion. This is interesting. I've spent a little bit of time looking at some of these other AI-based tools for helping developers build solutions with these projects. Spent a lot more time with, I don't know, people have probably heard of Cursor before or Windsurf. Those are new developer environments, like a different editor that you would use. I kind of like Claude Code, which is like a command line thing. And you can have like Claude Code in the terminal while you're working in VS Code and have it go through and explain everything it wants to do and then help you go through and like implement those changes. It's cool. These tools aren't cheap. Find that you're going to get like about 10 minutes in and then find out you might have used almost all your tokens. So like with Claude Code, you can get an unlimited license with it or unlimited usage if you drop $200 a month. So not cheap. So you got to figure out how much time you're saving. So it's definitely cool. It's definitely compelling. Is it $200 compelling? I don't know. I mean, I think there's other ways you can use it. So something to kind of check out. Let's see. There was that one. What else did I want to say here? There's a little bit more stuff. I got another link to stuff like that. There's also some MCP servers that you can use inside of VS Code. They've got a whole list of them on the VS Code website where you can put things like Playwright in there to kind of help you create automated tests or for your UX-based testing. Things like integrating with Microsoft documentation, leveraging stuff with GitHub. They've got an MCP server, other stuff around productivity like Notion or sequential thinking, Atlassian, Asana, Zapier, cool stuff. So just a couple links for some references there. If you want to jump in, Julie, please feel free to jump in if you have any comments on any of this stuff.
Not yet.
Okay. Another thing too that was kind of big, this in the Microsoft 365 world, at Build, they introduced a series of APIs for Microsoft 365 Copilot, and some of them were GA, some of them were being announced as coming soon public preview, and some of them were already in public preview. The one that they announced last week on June the 27th, so last Friday, I think, is the retrieval API is now available in public preview. So think of this as like when you issue a prompt to M365 Copilot, it's going to go issue a query to the semantic index to go get data from the semantic index to implement essentially the RAG pattern and ground their response in your data. The retrieval API lets you do basically the same thing to make that query to the semantic index and get data back that you can use in your own solutions. This is useful for, like, say, if you don't want to use the Microsoft stack for creating a custom agent, which you would do if you were doing it as a declarative agent, then you could use a custom engine agent where you could use your own model and your own orchestrator and all this stuff. Well, the challenge that you had with that is you didn't have access to that grounding information that was in the semantic index. This allows you to do that. Some of the stuff is a little interesting with this, is that, like, they talked about it at Build, saying that it was going to be a metered API. Then I've seen some stuff that says it's not going to be a metered API. You're just going to need to be able to use it. You have to have a 365 Copilot license. Even though I got confirmation that it's a metered API, they're still saying something about you have to have a 365 license for this, or the M365 Copilot all you can eat $30 per user per month license. I still think it's supposed to be metered, but I can't really tell, because it seems like they're being very ambiguous and very confusing about what they say with this.
Well, okay, so here's what's confusing. First of all, let me guess, this is delegated only.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
just a running API joke.
Yeah.
But okay, so but it kind of makes sense that it wouldn't be like, it sort of makes sense that they would have like a pay-go and a licensed version of it, right? Like, so if the user calling the retrieval API has the full-blown $30 per user per month license, then why would you be charged for that endpoint when you already pay for that endpoint through the browser?
You mean if you already have the license?
Yeah. So if that user, right, has the license and whatever solution that it's making the call to it, if that user has a license to it, I don't feel like you should be charged extra. That's ridiculous. If the user doesn't have a license, then I could totally see a pay-go model where, you have your one license that gets you your semantic index, and then you sort of opt out of the licensing, and now you're using that API endpoint from a user that isn't licensed. I could see a pay-go model on that. That makes sense to me. So I could see both. I think maybe the answer is that it'll be metered if you don't have a license, and if you do have a license, then you should just be able to use it.
So I agree with you on that. If you're already paying for it, then you should be fine with it. So right now, the way that the docs state it says, and these were updated on June the 9th of 2025, it says that the retrieval API is available at no extra cost to users with an M365 Copilot license, the all-you-can-eat license. And then it says support for users without that all-you-can-eat M365 Copilot license is currently not available. But my understanding is that when they go GA, there will be a metered option. So
yeah,
yes, it would be, if I go to create a custom engine agent, I don't need to have a 365 Copilot license to be able to use it. This would allow me, because I end up paying for everything. So if this was I hope that this is also available as a metered option, so that I could go through and I could have my own solutions that use it. Otherwise, you got to build your own semantic index. So
yep,
which is possible, but it's just extra work. So okay. The next thing I was going to cover here, let's make sure I get this right. The retrieval API was the big one. There is also, for those of you, I don't know who this would affect that are developers, but somebody, they are in the Microsoft Graph, they are deprecating a header. It's called MS App ACTS AS. So this is the shifts management Graph API. It's a header that they used to indicate the user on whose behalf the application was acting on, but it conflicted with the graph permission model, where there was no signed in user for app only access scenarios. So to align with this, they're now deprecating that header, saying don't act as, don't have the MS app act as. Instead, they're going to use basically the permissioning model of either OBO or to use OBO, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's more clean, so that's good.
Yes. On the Azure side, 2 bits of news. The MCP support is announced in preview for the Azure AI Foundry agent service. And then one more thing, this is kind of interesting here. There's an article that I found on the AI platform blog from last week as well, June 24th, titled Developing Code Assist, a Multi-Agent Tool. So Code Assist is, think of this kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where you can use like Claude Code or GitHub Copilot to help you do your development inside of VS Code. This is yet another option. I think right now it's limited to just Python, and it's also limited to having a project in Azure AI Foundry. So it's a paid thing, and you're using the AI Foundry SDK for Python. So it's just preview. So hopefully they'll go with additional languages in the future. So just throw that out there. So again, all those notes, all those links to all the notes that the news that I just mentioned, they'll all be in the show notes, and everybody who's a subscriber to our newsletter will also get those delivered straight to their inbox shortly. If you weren't getting our newsletter at the beginning, when we first launched it, you should be getting it now. There were some issues with Microsoft treating it as spam. That has been, I want to say it's been resolved. It's nothing we did to resolve it. It's actually Microsoft was being overly aggressive with some changes they made in their filtering process. And I've worked with some people to make sure that going like, hey, we should not be getting hit with this. And now the spam confidence level for our newsletters back down to 1, which is where it should be, instead of it being a 10, which is the worst it could be, which is why it was going into quarantine for most people, but some of them going into jump. Okay. Anything else you want to add with news, Julie?
No, I think that wraps it all up.
Okay. Awesome. So let's jump into the meat and potatoes of our show. All right, Julie, today I thought that now that we've covered the notes, I thought that today we could have a little bit of like reflection on any takeaways we had from the conference last week, the not the M365, the TechCon 365 conference, which dovetailed as both the TechCon 365 conference and the PowerCon. Is that right?
Yep. And DataCon.
Okay, so Power Platform, and which is Power Automate and Copilot Studio, and then DataCon,
which is like Fabric and which is Power BI and Data Lake or whatever the heck it's called. I don't know. I don't have Jason Himmelstein whispering in my ear right now, so I don't know them all. But yeah, those things.
The only Jason that I'm well versed in is one without the A in it. And our friend Jason, but not. So, this is a third party conference. They usually do this 3 times a year in different cities. This year it's in Seattle,
Atlanta, and Dallas.
In Dallas, that's right. Other cities they do in the past, and I think they're going back to some of them as well. Washington D.C., Chicago, but they do it a couple different times a year. So this one was in Seattle. It was in the new conference center, same place they held Microsoft Build for. Beautiful venue, really nice venue.
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful venue, and I mean there was like a good side to it, and there was like also like for the attendees, I think it was fantastic, and for the speaker, for everybody, it was fantastic. There was a downside to it that I didn't appreciate until towards the latter half of the event, and that is, I love the fact how open it was and how spacious it was, and how they had these big open areas that with all these really comfy chairs and stuff, along with a bunch of circle tables where you could network and you could just chill, or you could have a little meeting. You could have a meeting out in the open, like a one-on-one meeting out in the open. But the thing that was a little bit challenging to it is there were, like, you and I saw each other a bunch, but there were people that I didn't realize we're actually speaking at the event, or I'd forgotten that we're speaking at the event, and I didn't see them until literally after the event. Like Laura Rogers, I ran into her early on Friday morning when I stopped in the speaker room to drop off my bags after I checked out of the hotel. And then I didn't see her again until after the very last session before we were all heading out for our flights. And I saw her at the back at the hotel bar with all of our bags. And I was like, I didn't even see you this week.
Yeah, I think because it was not just the Microsoft 365, TechCon 365 that it's always been, and it was the PowerCon and DataCon. They had 3 floors of that conference center. They had 3, 4, and 5. And it made you really spread out. Like you ended up like, and so, Laura being more power platform and us not really being that, we were probably on different floors. So you're like circling around and you're in your floor and sort of going between sessions or whatever and stopping people in the hallway. But then you're not crossing floors. So other than everybody going to 5 for like lunch and to go to the expo hall, you're not really crossing paths that much. So yeah, I agree. There was a whole bunch of people that I would normally see that I did not see, it, to your very point. Yeah. Although I loved that big bank of like stairs with cushions on them with the
Beautiful.
windows in front of them. That
Yeah.
was awesome. We just like Derek Cash Peterson and I would just camp out on that first thing in the morning and like just kind of get ourselves together and see who we saw and chat with people and whatever. So that was a good little camp out spot.
It was, and they had these so they had this big, like where that area was, there was like a really big open area where open across all the floors, so it wasn't completely
Yep.
separate. I
Yep.
think I only left the 4th floor one time the entire
Hmm.
week, where all my stuff was. I went up because the expo was on the 5th floor. I went up there at one point to go find somebody. We were chatting a little bit. Ironically, I saw you on the way down from the 5th to the 4th floor that same time, but then I never was on the 3rd floor. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah.
I never went to any of the sessions on the 5th floor. I don't know what was going on up there other than just the expo. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. But that big open area too, they had this there's this like little bench, almost like bar stools, but you couldn't you could sit next to somebody. But I found so many people were like taking calls and meetings there, and being able to look out. Granted, somebody could see you and interrupt you, but still, it was very like it looked like a great spot to sit there and work.
Yeah. I think people were mostly honoring that though. I think
Yeah.
people that were standing there, like, no, people were just sort of like, oh, somebody's having a meeting there and I'll keep walking. Like, I sort of felt that.
Yeah. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Yep.
I only got to attend one session from everybody else. No, actually, I attended 2 sessions from other people presented. I missed one of mine. I made all the rest of mine, and I attended 2. But yeah, I sat through Derek Cash Peterson's SharePoint Framework, Intro to SharePoint Framework one, which was I found it real interesting because some of the people that were in that were also in my workshop the day before or 2 days before on the SharePoint Framework. I was like, what did you guys just want to hear somebody else say something similar? Because he's covering everything that I covered just in a breakout session where I had a half day. So I started feeling very self-conscious, like, did I do a crappy job of explaining this? So, and then I also sat through another one towards the end of the week, which I'm still frustrated by it. But I'm curious if you had like any kind of like big takeaways from stuff from the event of things that you walk away with that you from conversations
I
or anything.
was so busy going from Ask the Experts booths to like sessions to having hallway meetings to whatever it was that I got to 0 additional sessions other than popping into the end of one to like grab Derek to go to our next thing together. So I didn't actually go to any sessions, but I did sit at the Ask the Experts booth 3 times. So I was there quite a bit. And one of the interesting sort of takeaways I have is that Power Platform is still king. Like every single conversation going on there, there was like a whole panel of us sitting there, and whoever was the Power Platform person that was there, assuming, Power Apps or Power Automate, had literally a line, and nobody really needed to talk to any of the rest of us. So we ended up started pitching in, but as much as you can if you know anything about the Power Platform, but it's just everybody is just doing Power Platform. That's all they're doing. And, whatever. It's fine, but that's what it is.
That was kind of one of my takeaways too. And that was one of the ones I wanted to bring up with you. And I'm interested to hear if any listeners, like, I would love it if you would give us some feedback on this, on what you'd be interested in hearing about, because and specifically what Julie just touched on. It's actually one of my notes that I wanted to make sure I covered today. Julie and I also, so Julie did the Ask the Experts. I somehow missed the sign up options for the Ask the Experts. This conference has like a separate team for speakers behind the scenes, and they put a call out and saying, hey, there's a spreadsheet, go sign up for one of these Ask the Expert sessions. You can put your name in there. I somehow completely missed that. And I missed the call for the slides too. So I was one of the last people putting the slides in.
You were not the only one. There was a bunch of people who got left off the team. You
That
might have been
was
one of them.
It was very reassuring to see how many people were late submitting their slides. Like, I'm really sorry for the conference. I know that's a pain in the butt for them, but like knowing that I was like one of 50, like going, okay, cool. Or not 50, but like probably at least one of at
Yeah.
least 20
Oh yeah, for
who,
sure.
who dropped the ball. But you and I also did the with Derek, aforementioned Derek, a roundtable for, I think the
Yep.
title was about SharePoint and Teams development. But really it was, I wish we had
Yep.
put like M365 development and enumerated a few more things. And we had at the peak of it, started small, finished big ish. I think we had 8-ish people in there.
Yeah,
And
about that.
the the big thing for me, like I remember when everybody walked out of the room, I looked at you and Derek and I not blew up, but like I just sat there like I am still amazed at the number of people that think that the way to build something custom on M365, that your only option is using Power Platform.
Yep.
Um, and of the people that were in that room, I think only one or two was aware that there was another option.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree 100% with that.
and when I say that, I mean like when I say another option, I mean like something that is more in the full stack developer realm. So that would be using the SharePoint framework to customize forms, for
Mm-hmm.
create custom forms in lists and document libraries in SharePoint, or building custom apps for Microsoft Teams, or I think most of them were aware of the Microsoft Graph, but then other options for implementing like workflows that were not user based, like Power Automate. Instead, you could use something like Logic apps from Azure to be able to do that. I, I'm amazed at the number of people who just aren't even aware that there's another option. And that's not me saying that the Power Platform is not good. I mean, I think that it fits a need. It's got a very targeted audience. It's got some scenarios that it fits great in for like doing a Power App or Power Automate or Copilot Studio. But there's a lot. It's not a one size fits all thing. It's not like it shouldn't be the only solution. There are other options that make more sense. I'm of the opinion if you're doing an enterprise app that's more mission critical, I don't think that that's a great option to use, because like it's not a very it's not a uh from a scalability and a management point of view and an administrative point of view and governance, it's not a good, I don't think the Power Platform is a good solution for enterprise based solutions, or
I agree
um
100%.
line of business, or stuff like that. I think it's great for one off stuff. I think it's great for enabling certain groups smaller groups to build solutions for small teams. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like using it to build like just a mission critical app, I don't think it's a great solution. Um, and it
And
just
it doesn't scale
it it
at
doesn't
all.
it doesn't scale. It doesn't scale from a performance point of view. It doesn't scale from a management point of view. If you have a form that you create, you use Power Apps to go through and customize a form in SharePoint, and you want to do that to the same list that you have across like 50 sites, you're going to have 50 instances of that form. If you ever make a change to one, whether you're fixing a bug or you're adding a new capability or feature to it, you got to go remember where it's done. You got to go do it to 50 different times.
And then add on to that the authentication protocol, because you're talking about delegated permissions. So you have to have a user that has the right access. And there is even a limitation, because a user can only be, and I don't know the stat, so I'm not going to try to quote it, but it's not a large number of teams. Like a user can only be added to a limited number of teams. So even if you create that mythical service account that people have been doing for a while, where they'll create a, power user account, give it a Microsoft 365 license, and then you're thinking to yourself, well, I'll just add that account to every single team, and that way, I'll be able to at least have the owner of all those 50, 100,000, 2,000, 10,000 flows be that user. There is a limit to how
Yeah.
many of those it can own. So
Yeah.
unless you're managing the life cycle, so if you're doing like a project-based sites, let's say, in your organization, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I have a template, and you figure out how to do an ALM on this Power App or Power Automate Flow or whatever, and you're associating it with that user each time. Unless you're doing lifecycle and deleting out those sites, thereby deleting and then deleting out those Power Automate flows or Power Apps, you're going to end up with a limitation. You're going to hit a wall where you're not going to be able to create anymore. I mean, that's a real world scenario that absolutely is going to happen to people. And they're like, oh, it's never going to happen to me. Well, it is. It's just not an enterprise grade solution. And I even have people at Microsoft when we do MVP calls or whatever, and I'm just, I'm raising my hand and I'm like, well, Power Automate's not an enterprise grade solution. They're like, oh, how dare you? And I'm like, give me a break. Do you not understand what enterprise development is? This is ridiculous.
I don't. A lot of them don't. A lot of them don't. And I think that the thing that's frustrating to me with this, and it's a theory. I don't have hard evidence to prove this. There's a guy that I listen to a lot, like a podcast, and he'll ask his interviewers. He's like, "Is there something that you believe to be true, but you don't have the evidence to prove it?" And to me, like for that, it is Microsoft they continuously tell customers the way they don't say it. Some of them probably say it explicitly, but the message is always, this is how you're supposed to customize and extend anything in Microsoft 365. And they pitch Power Platform. It's in their best interest because it sells licenses, but that does not mean that it is the only or the best option for every single scenario.
Right.
I know you and I are on the same page with this, and there's a lot of other developers that are on the same page. We all complain about it, but I was thinking a lot more about this on my long 5-hour delay yesterday, and at the Atlanta airport. I was thinking a lot more about this when I was trying to stay calm from all the other stuff going on around me, and putting my headphones on with the screaming kids all over the place who were overly tired from sitting in the airport waiting for their parents to figure out how they were going to get home. No, I just hypothetically, at least, right? Nope, not bitter at all. Whenever this discussion comes up, you know who's not involved in it with all of us? Any of our Power Platform friends.
No.
Any of the people, and I don't mean just Microsoft people. Like I don't particularly trust the Microsoft people when I talk to them about Power Platform, because they really are going to be only talking about stuff in their self-interest. But I thought more about it, and I'm like, you know what? You and I were doing this, and Derek were doing this roundtable, and we were talking about dev stuff. And clearly, people who thought Power Platform was the option came to that roundtable and were like blown away. One person talked about, hey, I'm doing all this stuff with Power Automate. How should I do this? And someone asked us, like, would how many of you have had issues with, or have had, I can't remember exactly how he asked it, but it was something like, have you ever had issues with Power Automate stuff just breaking out of the blue? And all three of us are like, all of them, like all the time. I always just have them breaking for no reason for authentication stuff. I kept my mouth shut at first, and I heard you, because you've done more implementation than I have, you and Derek have, and you guys both said it. And I'm like, that's my experience. I only have a handful, and every single one of them breaks to the point where I don't even want to use Power Automate anymore. And I just thought I'm like, Steve Jobs says, I'm not holding it right.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in the next time we do this event in Atlanta, is trying to pull in somebody like a Paul Stork, like who's an MVP and spends a lot of time on Power Platform, or I would love to get Wes Preston to come and join us with this. Or I'm going to find, if they're doing one of these roundtables, like if Wes is doing a roundtable and he's hosting it, I want to go sit in it just to listen and to be like another voice of reason if it comes up, not to sit there and to try and be the advocate for the dev side, not to sit there and try and recount or refute everything that they're saying. But like, for me, I would have liked to, when we had that discussion, I would have liked to have had a Power Platform person sitting at the table and kind of going toe to toe with us. I don't know everything that Power Platform can do, but I understand some of the stuff that's frustrating about it. And I would like for a Power Platform person to like fact check me when I'm talking about things on the dev side. Like, oh, well, that kind of sucks on the dev side because we can do it over here. That's much easier. I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm not the point that's the person that's going to say that it should always be a dev thing and it should never be Power Platform. But I would like to have more of an honest kind of a conversation on different ways you would slice and dice it.
I will say that I spend a lot of time just because of our circles intercrossing, discussing this very topic with Chris Kent. And Chris sort of walks that line in that he can do SharePoint Framework. He does a lot of work with that, but he also does a lot of work with Power Platform just because he fell into it and it was sort of like the thing he had to do. So he was trying to do so many things with Power Apps and Power Automate. And the amount of time he would be like, this just is not the right way to do this. And he was sort of forced to do it because the organization he was consulting for said, this is the tool you must use to do all of these things we're asking you to do. And he just has horror story after horror story after horror story of like the things he was trying to make Power Platform do that it just really cannot do. All of the things we sort of talk about. So I use his sort of example as the baseline for a lot of my knowledge. And then I add to that the fact that we often will have a client where, there's this aspect of, we make suggestions, you make decisions. I can't force them to do it the way that I think is best. I can just advise them on my experience. And a lot of times they'll be like, I hear you. However, we need to be able to manage or maintain this thing when you are not here. So if that's the answer, even though it's maybe not the right solution, we will have to sometimes implement Power Platform type of solution for them. And, inevitably it's going to be what it is. So we have done them, and it takes me just as long, if not longer, to implement many simple things. No, but some of the more complicated stuff, it takes me way longer to implement them in Power Platform than it does to implement them with Pro Code. And then the third sort of piece of knowledge I have is the number of people who have implemented something with Power Automate. That's the primary one, Power Automate, where they've implemented something with Power Automate and it's enterprise grade. Like they need an enterprise grade solution and it's failing randomly on them. Mm-hmm. We had there was some reason why sometimes when this HTTP triggered Power Automate flow would be called, it would randomly send a 403 response for just no reason. And then the next time you call, it'd be fine. Well, now that packet just got dropped on the floor. The original call is dropped. We don't have any way to recover from that. If we were using a more pro code solution, we would have ways to handle that. We wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like that just wouldn't even be a scenario. So, I mean, that's sort of where I come from, with the experience perspective is, lots of stories, lots of in the trenches. Like this is just not the right answer for this level of solution. Again, I agree with you that for one-offs or single threaded solutions, it can be fine.
It's funny as you're doing this. Well, first of all, I might have to turn in my developer card because I had to do a quick search on 403. Like I was like, which one was that? I know what I'm sorry, you were drinking coffee when I said that, but I was like 403s. There's like 2 or 3 status codes that have popped up in my readings and stuff that I've been looking at in the last 24 hours. One of them I never heard of, 413. Big payload.
I don't know that one either.
Payload 2 bit.
Okay. Okay.
But I can only rattle that off really fast because I had no idea what it was about 3 hours ago.
Feeling you.
But like 400, 401. I mean, I got that real quick. 429, something like that. But then I was like, 401 was, what is it?
Unauthorized.
Unauthorized. Yeah. And 403 is forbidden.
Yeah.
So insufficient permissions or or access restriction. Yeah. So yeah. And so there was another thing as I'm sitting there writing stuff down, writing notes down here. We should get Chris on as a guest for us to join us for this podcast, and just to kind of have him talk through some of this stuff and making it. I don't want to make this like a Power Platform slam, because it's not my intent. My intent is more like just making sure people understand the options that are available to them. And that's the part that I walked away from that was frustrating from the conference, was the number of people who just didn't know there was another option. So many people have come to me that have been like, hey, you're a developer and we've been doing stuff with Power Automate, Power Apps, and we're so frustrated by the governance issue in the sprawl. there's got to be another way. I'm like, there is another way. It's just using, I don't know what else
Yeah.
to call it, but just like native dev, where I'm working with, working with VS Code, and I'm just working with VS Code. Let's just leave it at that. I'm working with VS Code. That's the first thing I'm thinking of. So that would be considered like pro code or full stack dev. There's so many things I see like with Power Platform where people are like, oh, I'm a no code, low code developer. I'm like, I, maybe so, but I'm looking at this Power Automate and you're doing a hell of a lot of parsing of JSON and trying to issue REST requests that if you call that low code, you should see the pro code side because it's a lot easier to do it than what you're doing here. Like I have trouble when I know what I want to get done. I have trouble doing
Mm.
it. Part of that's a little my greenness with working with the platform, but
Yeah.
like classic example when we were talking about in that round table, and we were talking about the difference between Power Automate and Logic Apps. And it's like if you do the
Yeah.
Power Automate, Logic Apps, they're the exact same thing under the covers, exact same infrastructure, the exact same runtime. And
Yeah.
the dev experience or the editing experience is almost the exact same. It's pretty much the same editor, but there's a very, very small nuances between the two. But at the core, the thing that's different is one of them, Power Automate, is all user-based licensing. So it's
Yep.
all going to run as a person. And so you pay a license to be able to use it, or you pay for premium licenses. And then on the Logic App side, you don't pay for a license. There is some premium stuff that you end up paying for, but it's all resource based. It's all like consumption based. So you pay
Yep.
when you use it. If I build a Logic app and I never use it, it doesn't cost me anything,
Right.
or it's pennies. It's like it's ridiculous cost. I
Well,
think
and with the premium with Logic Apps, you just pay more for that step.
that resource, yeah. So that
Yeah.
resource is more
Yeah.
expensive. So it's not a license. It's just a yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I yeah I would. It's just that was a big thing that I walked away. I was like going still more with that. That was one. Did you have any other? I have one more that I was gonna.
No, that was the big one that I was gonna to put to. So yeah, we covered it. Yep.
The other one that was big for me that I was really hoping to get an answer from, and I was hoping, but I was not optimistic on the dev side. When it comes to building agents or doing stuff with like Copilot extensibility, there is this very confusing story right now that I've been trying to get nailed down ever since I first heard it back at Ignite 2024. And then I tried to get answers for it back when we went to the MVP summit back in March. Can't obviously share what was discussed there, but I walked out of it. I walked in with the same questions. And I walked out with the same question I walked in with. Hopefully was going to get an answer at the M365 community conference in Vegas. And then there was even more stuff that was confusing. And then I got even tried to get an answer at Build, and it's even more confusing. And since then I've been asking questions I still don't get. There are, when you build an agent, before when we used to build bots, we used the bot framework. And all a bot is now we call them chat bots, or we call them chat bots, and now we call them agents. All an agent is it's just, I would say you would throw in the AI. It's an adjective to saying I'm doing a chat bot, but it's got AI involved in it. It's got like large language
Yeah.
model or something.
Yeah.
I'm oversimplifying it, but that's generally how I see it.
Yeah.
Just a chat bot. The APIs and stuff that we're getting, Copilot APIs are going to make that a little bit easier to work with. Now, here's the thing that gets me about this is that we have the M365 Agents SDK that Microsoft released. And then we have the Teams AI library, and they came with a V2 of the AI library. The two of these things are almost like trying to solve the same problem in a certain way. And it's really, really frustrating because I went to one session at the very end of the conference, the last day, first session in the morning. I spoke to the speaker afterwards. He's from Microsoft, where he was pitching the Teams AI library V2. And I'm like, if I go look at the M365 Agents SDK, the guy that owns that, he said it at the Ignite conference in 2024. It also was kind of said this year at the Build conference. There is a whole section in that says this section of the M365 Agents SDK, the whole thing is the replacement for the Bot Framework V4. You can think of the Agents SDK as Bot Framework V5, but there's a section in there that it says it's the replacement. This section is a replacement for the Teams AI library, which I understood like going, cool, that's going to replace Teams AI library V1, but now they're doing V2. And it's like, and then the way I asked the explanation, like, can you please explain why you choose one over the other? And they're like, well, you start over here, and then when you find you kind of bang your head against it, here's how you can go through and switch over to use the other one. I'm like, why isn't it all just one? This is a confusing
Yeah.
story. Like, where am I supposed to start? you can start in one, you can start in the other, and then you can kind of like morph the thing you start in the agent's SDK to use the Teams AI library instead of using their SDK, and they have their own CLI and their own templates and everything. It's like, it looks like two groups that are just, one of them's gone rogue and the two of them are fighting and they're in different orgs, and so they're shipping the org chart. And I finally figured out who owns each one of them. I figured out who I got the email address of each one of the owners. I've asked these questions in public before. I'm finally just going to sit down and be like, all right, today, look, I've asked this. I'm asking the same question to you that I'm asking the other guys. Can the two of you please get together and have like a joint statement that says, here's what you can expect going forward and how things are going to work? Because right now, both of you, it's just really frustrating.
Yeah, I feel like not only are they shipping the org, they're shipping the growing pains,
Yep.
right? And it's, I don't even know that they know the answer, and that might be part of the problem. I have found the whole, not for nothing, but I found the whole story around the Teams toolkit and how many iterations of that thing where they would major version release over and over and over and over again, breaking themselves constantly, to the point that it was like the old story with, if you were an old on-prem SharePoint person, never install the V1 patch of any major version of SharePoint right away, because you never know, wait like at least 30 days. The Teams toolkit was that for years, like years. It was like that, complete mayhem. Then it felt like it stabilized a little bit. I did try to dive into it, and I went, Jesus Christ, this is a lot. It feels like overkill. We worked on it together. You helped me get started on it. I was like, all right, but I couldn't get anything to production like that would work, because it was like a whole bunch of little black boxes floating out in the ether that didn't feel like they were connected to each other in a way that you could really debug, which I hate. That makes me mental. But then they just went and did it again, because it was fairly stable. And then they're like, we're going to name change. And now this whole thing is blowing up because they're like trying to jam AI development, which, in their defense, is a very quickly evolving set of things. And they're trying to jam that into the same toolkit, which, okay, maybe, but it's messing up the story again, right? Like, you go in and you're like, oh, I don't want any of the AI things, but everything got their name changed and we don't know what, and graph connectors are now Copilot connectors. And it's just, it's a constant mess. And I think it is incredibly intimidating. And I think it makes people go, yep, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this. So maybe, to loop back around to the conversation we just had, maybe people are just like, yeah, don't want to have anything to do with that pro code story because it's too complicated, not clean, not well explained, not well documented. It's really hard to get over the hump of the tool, let alone understanding what you're building. But the tool is a barrier to entry in and of itself. And now you end up with the scenario where everybody thinks that they should be doing everything in Power Platform. I mean, I hate to loop back around to that, but that's what it feels like.
This goes back to something you and I've talked about, and I guess we'll probably have to start wrapping this up, because I know we're getting close to our time on this. But this goes back to something you and I've talked about, which, like, one of my biggest requests that I've had from the M365 team forever is somebody who owns the dev story, like a dev czar, and just be like, I need somebody to own the entire thing. And what is the extensibility story? And under that, they have the full story, or that little group has a full story on everything related to Power Platform, and everything related to Teams dev and extensibility, and everything related to SharePoint dev and extensibility, and everything related to Microsoft Graph, and everything related to Copilot extensibility. It's like, there's so many different groups creating their own little implementation and dev stories throughout Microsoft 365 that don't seem to talk to each other. Case in point, what happened with the field customizer stuff a couple weeks ago, that it is, you don't see that on the Azure side. And that's the part that's been so frustrating on the 365 side. So I don't know. We can still hope that Santa Claus is real one day.
I actually remember the call we were on where you and I actually had that feedback together at the same time. I remember it was like 3, maybe 4 years ago at this point,
I was
but
going to say, we're probably
Jesus.
a whole lot younger then. Were we like even drinking at that
Yeah.
point?
Oh, I
Drinking
don't even
age.
know. Could be. Could be.
Okay. I think we've beat that one sufficiently to death. But hey, if you are interested, we'd love to have these conversations with you in about 5 weeks. I think it's the week of August 23rd. We are both going to be in Atlanta at
Nope.
TechCon.
Nope. 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 Nope.
Oh,
August 11th.
what?
Yeah,
Okay.
the
All right.
August 11th through the 15th at TechCon 365 Atlanta.
Thank you for correcting me on that one. Julie and I will both have links in the show notes for that event too, where I think we both have discount codes. If you use either one of our codes, you
Sure,
save $100 in the
pick one.
registration.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'd love to have this conversation with you. If you're going to that event, please reach out if you'd like to have these conversations. We'd love to sit down and talk to some of you and just hear what you have to say. So, who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe turn it into a kind of a excerpt of a podcast episode.
Yeah.
See. Okay, Julie, want to do some picks?
Let's do it.
All right, Julie, I'm going to let you go first since I was hosting the show. What is your pick
Yeah.
for us today?
Yeah. Normally I've been doing, I've been picking, food and cooking stuff, and that is definitely my passion. But, since I had to fly to Seattle and I decided to get a YouTube premium subscription, and you can talk about that in a little bit. I decided to download some podcasts that I've been wanting to watch, and one of them was from the Diary of a CEO, which is a UK-based podcast, and he had and has had many times on Simon Sinek, and the title of the episode was "You're Being Lied to About AI's Real Purpose. We're Teaching Our Kids to Not Be Human," and it was a 2-hour podcast. So, you have to be full in to watch this whole thing, but there's chapters and you can go in and listen to the pieces and parts. They spend a good first 30 minutes definitely talking about AI, but I think Simon is writing a book about friendship, and so I think it veers into that a little bit, and I think there's good reason to. This is definitely something that I don't have a fully formed mental thought about, but I have been thinking about a lot, which is the balance of AI and the cognitive sort of aspect of asking AI to do things for you all the time and you losing your edge,
Yeah.
right? And it's something that I definitely lean away from pretty hard. Like I'm like, AI has its place and I ask it to do certain things, but I think I'm careful about what those things are. Like, is this me being lazy, or is this me being like, I need a little boost, like I want my search to happen faster, but I'm going to learn the thing I'm asking about. And I personally mentally try to constantly make that decision before I use AI. Like I don't have it just write everything for me. Maybe I have it refine things, but I definitely sort of, get myself started in code for sure. I'm only like, hey, I've got this bicep file and what are the options for this one thing? Because I don't want to Google it and search through a whole bunch of documentation if it can give me the answer really quick. Those are use cases that I think about. So at any rate, this podcast just went deep into a lot of that bits and pieces of it, and sort of like the AI and the human quotient. And I just got a lot out of it. And so that is my pick for this week. I thought it was really good.
It's a really good pick. I watched the very end of it. There was a part you called out to me that I watched. I had my head in the sand. It seems I missed this podcast, but it was interesting. I like the way the guy was the host interviews and talks to people.
Yeah.
I downloaded it, intended to watch it on the flight on the way home when I was spending all my time trying to find a way home.
But then you had to figure out how to get home. So, that took precedent.
Which all of it ended up, and all that time I spent ended up getting canceled. So anyway,
cool.
Oh, well. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
My pick is quick then, because I totally forgot that you were going to do this. My pick is YouTube Premium. This is, YouTube is awesome. Absolutely awesome. And the free version of it, perfectly fine. But for me, I find I love to be able to have the ability to take stuff offline. So if I go out for a run, if I want to have just put stuff in in my watch list and have it all get downloaded to my iPad automatically, or I have a playlist on my personal YouTube profile that's just called Binge Worthy. And I just will add stuff to that playlist. And that playlist is set to automatically download on both my phone and my iPad. So if I jump on a plane or if I am sitting somewhere, I know that I can always sit there and start watching it. Let you down. The two biggest things for me for YouTube Premium, number one, you don't have ads.
Yeah.
So it avoids ads. Two, it allows you to take stuff offline to download it. With at least I can't tell that there's a limit on how much you can download. And it's unlike like Netflix where it doesn't expire after a certain amount of time. So it's really cool. I really like it. Strongly recommend it. Huge tool for me, both in just entertainment and both a way to go through and learn new stuff like this.
Yeah. My family only watches YouTube, not me personally, but my husband and son only watch YouTube as their entertainment. So they are very thrilled with me that we got YouTube Premium because now they both have ad-free watching and they're like very happy about their lives. So
awesome. Well,
yeah.
I think that wraps us up for episode 9. What you think?
I think we did it and managed to go way longer than I thought we were going to. So good job, us.
Always. All right, Julie, it's good to see you. Hope to see some of you at the the TechCon 365 conference in Atlanta. And we'll get together for episode in a couple weeks.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, bye, everybody. Till next time.
Did you like this episode? Please like and share it with your friends. We're on YouTube, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. You'll find all the links in the video description below. And if you have a question, head over to our site at codedeploygo.live, where you can send it in. Also, sign up for our mailing list on our site at codedeploygo.live to learn about future episodes, opportunities for listeners, and get the show notes from each episode sent straight to your inbox. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.